Her husband didn't know she spoke Japanese. When she heard what he said about her at dinner, everything changed. Naomi Chen Williams sat across from her husband at Sakura Gardens, the city's most exclusive Japanese restaurant, watching him charm the Takahashi executives with rehearsed bows and broken phrases. She smiled politely, playing the role of the quiet, decorative wife he'd introduced her as. But when Mr. Takahashi leaned toward her husband and said in perfect Japanese, "Your wife. She's just a beautiful accessory. Yes? Not much going on upstairs." Naomi's grip tightened on her chopsticks. Her husband, Marcus Williams, laughed and replied in clumsy Japanese, "You understand perfectly. She's good for photos and events. Nothing more." What happened next would shatter the empire he thought he'd built alone. Viewers, before we dive into this story, do me a favor. If you're watching this right now, wherever you are in the world, Lagos, London, New York, Tokyo, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button because trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when silence becomes the most powerful weapon. Stories like this one remind us that underestimating people is the fastest way to lose everything. Now, let's get into it. The private dining room at Sakura Gardens was a masterpiece of minimalist elegance. Shoji screens separated them from the main restaurant. Paper-thin walls that filtered light into soft amber shadows. Low tables gleamed with lacquered shine, and the scent of miso and grilled fish hung delicately in the air. Outside the windows, downtown Atlanta glittered like scattered diamonds against the night sky. Naomi Chen Williams had been married to Marcus Williams for 4 years. 4 years of watching him take credit for ideas she'd whispered to him over breakfast. 4 years of standing beside him at galas while he introduced her as "my lovely wife," before immediately turning the conversation back to himself. 4 years of biting her tongue while he explained her own culture to people who didn't know any better. Tonight was supposed to be his crowning achievement. Williams Global Consulting had been courting Takahashi Industries for 8 months, chasing a $600 million partnership that would establish his firm as a major player in international tech consulting. Marcus had spent weeks preparing, hiring translators, studying basic Japanese customs, rehearsing his pitch until every word felt smooth as silk. What he didn't know was that Naomi had grown up in Osaka. Her father, Dr. James Chin, had been a cardiovascular surgeon stationed at a U.S. military hospital in Japan, where he'd met and married her mother, Yuki Tanaka, a linguistics professor at Osaka University. Naomi had spent the first 18 years of her life switching seamlessly between English and Japanese, attending international schools where she'd learned to navigate both cultures with the fluidity of someone who belonged to both and neither. She'd never told Marcus, not because she was hiding it, but because he'd never asked. In 4 years of marriage, he'd never once inquired about her childhood in Japan, never wondered why she kept Japanese novels on her nightstand, never questioned how she knew exactly which tea to serve. When his Japanese clients visited their home, he saw her as Naomi Williams, the pretty wife with the exotic features, who looked good in photographs and smiled at the right moments. He didn't see Naomi Chen, the woman who'd graduated summa cum laude from Emory with degrees in international business and East Asian studies, who'd turned down 3 consulting offers from Fortune 500 companies, because Marcus had convinced her that supporting his dream was more important than pursuing her own. Now, as she sat in this restaurant, surrounded by men speaking her mother's language, she felt the careful mask she'd worn for 4 years beginning to crack. Mr. Takahashi, the silver-haired CEO of Takahashi Industries, sat at the head of the table with the posture of a man who'd built empires on patience and precision. His son, Kenji Takahashi, sat beside him, younger, sharper, watching everything with eyes that missed nothing. 2 other executives flanked them, both older gentlemen whose expensive suits whispered wealth without shouting it. Marcus sat directly across from Mr. Takahashi, his navy Tom Ford suit perfectly tailored, his smile bright and confident. He'd been talking for 20 minutes straight, his words tumbling over each other in his eagerness to impress. And that's why Williams Global Consulting is the perfect partner for Takahashi Industries, Marcus said, gesturing broadly. We understand the Asian market. We respect your culture. We're not like these other American firms that try to force Western solutions onto Eastern problems." He paused, waiting for his translator to relay the message. The woman, a nervous young professional Marcus had hired from a temp agency, stumbled slightly over the business terminology. Naomi caught the mistakes immediately. The translator was saying Western answers instead of Western solutions. A subtle but significant difference that changed the meaning entirely. Mr. Takahashi's expression remained neutral, but his eyes flickered with something that might have been amusement or concern. Kenji leaned forward slightly, his gaze moving from Marcus to Naomi and back again. "Your presentation was very thorough, Mr. Williams." Mr. Takahashi said in accented but clear English. "You've obviously put much thought into this proposal." "Thank you," Marcus said, beaming. "I've spent months studying your company's needs. I even learned some Japanese." He attempted a phrase, something that was supposed to mean, "I'm honored to work with you," but came out sounding more like, "I'm honored to work your bathroom." The translator winced. The executives remained polite, their faces carefully blank. Naomi felt heat rising in her cheeks, though whether from secondhand embarrassment or anger, she couldn't quite tell. "That's very dedicated of you," Kenji said smoothly, switching to English to spare everyone further awkwardness. "Learning a new language is always challenging. It's worth it for a partnership like this," Marcus said, not realizing he just butchered their language. "Besides, my wife here is half Japanese, so I've got a built-in cultural consultant at home." All eyes turned to Naomi. She felt the weight of their attention, felt the assumptions forming behind their polite expressions. Marcus had introduced her earlier as my wife, Naomi, with no mention of her background, her education, her expertise. Just my wife, as if that was the sum of her identity. "Is that so?" Mr. Takahashi said, addressing her directly for the first time that evening. "Where is your family from, Mrs. Williams?" Before Naomi could respond, Marcus answered for her. "Her mother's from somewhere in Japan. Osaka, I think? Or was it Tokyo? I can never remember." He laughed casually, completely unaware of the flash of distaste that crossed Kenji's face. "Osaka," Naomi said quietly, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning through her chest. "My mother is from Osaka." "Ah, Osaka, Mr. Takahashi said warmly. "A wonderful city. Very different from Tokyo. The people there have a distinct spirit, wouldn't you say?" "Yes," Naomi said, meeting his eyes. There was something in his gaze. A question. An invitation to say more. But Marcus's hand landed on her knee under the table, a silent warning she'd learned to recognize. "Stay quiet. Don't steal focus. Let him handle the business." She fell silent. The servers arrived with the next course, beautifully plated sashimi arranged like artwork on rectangular plates. Marcus fumbled with his chopsticks, trying to look comfortable and failing. Naomi picked up her own chopsticks with practiced ease, her movements fluid and natural. Kenji noticed. His eyes lingered on her hands for a moment before he switched his attention back to Marcus, who was launching into another rehearsed portion of his pitch. As the dinner progressed, Marcus grew more animated, more confident. The sake was flowing, though Naomi noticed the Japanese executives were barely touching theirs, while Marcus was on his third glass. His voice got louder, his gestures broader. He was performing, and in his mind, he was performing brilliantly. "The way I see it," Marcus said, leaning back in his chair with the swagger of someone who thought the deal was already closed. "This partnership is inevitable. You need American expertise to break into the Western market, and I'm the best there is. My track record speaks for itself." The translator hesitated before translating, clearly uncomfortable with the arrogance in his tone. Naomi saw Mr. Takahashi and Kenji exchange a glance, saw the shift in the room's energy. Then Mr. Takahashi leaned toward Marcus and said in Japanese, his tone conversational, almost friendly, "Your wife? She's just a beautiful accessory, yes? Not much going on upstairs." Naomi's breath caught. Her chopsticks froze halfway to her mouth. The words hung in the air. A test. A trap. Mr. Takahashi was watching Marcus carefully, waiting to see if he understood, if he would defend her, if he possessed even a shred of the cultural sensitivity he'd been claiming all night. Marcus laughed, the sound sharp and self-satisfied. He leaned forward conspiratorially and replied in his broken, terrible Japanese. "You understand perfectly. She's good for photos and events. Nothing more." The room went silent. Even the translator looked stricken, her face pale as she realized what had just been said. The other executives shifted uncomfortably, their expressions carefully neutral but their body language speaking volumes. Naomi set down her chopsticks with deliberate care. Her hands were steady, but inside, something fundamental was breaking apart and reforming into something harder, sharper, unforgiving. She looked at her husband, this man she'd supported through every failure and celebrated through every success. This man who'd just reduced her to a decoration, a prop, a pretty thing with no thoughts of her own. And he didn't even realize what he'd done. He was smiling, pleased with himself, thinking he'd bonded with the clients over casual misogyny. Mr. Takahashi's eyes found Naomi's. There was apology there, and curiosity, and something that looked like respect. He'd been testing Marcus, and Marcus had failed spectacularly. But more importantly, Mr. Takahashi was now watching Naomi, waiting to see what she would do, whether she would defend herself or continue playing the silent, decorative role her husband had assigned her. Kenji was watching her too, his expression unreadable but his attention absolute. Naomi took a slow breath. Then she reached for her water glass, took a small sip, and set it down with careful precision. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but clear, and her words were in flawless, elegant Japanese that made every man at the table sit up straighter. "Forgive my husband's rudeness, Takahashi-sama," she said. "He doesn't realize that in trying to impress you with false humility about his own wife, he's revealed exactly the kind of man he is. Someone without honor, without respect, and without the wisdom to recognize value when it sleeps beside him every night." The translator's mouth fell open. The executive stared. Marcus looked around, confused, knowing something had shifted, but not understanding what. "Naomi?" he said, his smile faltering. "What did you just say?" She turned to him, her expression serene, and switched to English. "I told them, you don't speak Japanese as well as you think you do." Marcus laughed nervously, glancing around the table for confirmation that everything was still going according to plan. But the faces staring back at him had changed. Mr. Takahashi's expression had shifted from polite neutrality to something approaching fascination. Kenji was leaning forward, his eyes locked on Naomi with unmistakable interest. The other executives had straightened in their seats, their body language completely transformed. "Mrs. Williams, Mr. Takahashi said in Japanese, his tone warm and respectful, "Your Japanese is extraordinary. Osaka dialect. If I'm not mistaken, you speak like someone who grew up there, not like someone who learned it as a second language." "Thank you, Takahashi-sama," Naomi replied in the same language, her words flowing with natural ease. "I spent my childhood in Osaka. My mother made sure I understood that language is not just words, but culture, respect, and understanding. Three things that cannot be faked or abbreviated." Marcus's smile was frozen on his face. "Okay, what's happening here? What are you saying?" Naomi turned to him, her expression calm. "I'm having a conversation with our guests. In Japanese. The language I've spoken fluently since I was 3 years old. The language you never bothered to ask me about." "You speak Japanese?" Marcus said, his voice rising slightly. "Since when?" "Since always," Naomi said quietly. "You just never asked." The weight of that statement settled over the table like snow. Marcus's face went through several shades of emotion. Confusion, embarrassment, and then something darker. Anger at being made to look foolish. "Why wouldn't you tell me something like that?" he demanded. "We're meeting with Japanese clients, and you didn't think to mention that you speak their language?" "You didn't ask me to be part of this meeting," Naomi said, her voice level. "You asked me to sit here and look pretty. Your words, not mine. You said, 'Just smile and let me handle the business talk.' So that's what I was doing until you decided to use me as a punchline." Kenji made a small sound, something between a cough and a laugh quickly suppressed. Mr. Takahashi's eyes moved between husband and wife with the attention of someone watching a masterclass in human nature. Marcus's jaw clenched. We'll discuss this at home. Let's not make a scene in front of our guests. Oh, but Marcus, Naomi said, her tone still perfectly pleasant. We're already past that point. You made the scene when you told Mr. Takahashi that I'm just a beautiful accessory with nothing going on upstairs. When you said I'm good for photos and events, nothing more. The blood drained from Marcus's face. You understood that? Every word, Naomi said. And so did they. She gestured to the Japanese executives, who were now watching Marcus with expressions that ranged from disappointment to outright disdain. Marcus turned to Mr. Takahashi, his voice desperate. Sir, I apologize. It was locker room talk. I didn't mean anything by it. Mr. Takahashi set down his chopsticks with deliberate care. When he spoke, it was in English, crisp and final. Mr. Williams, in Japan, we have a saying, the character of a man is revealed in how he treats those who can do nothing for him. You have shown us your character tonight. You disrespect your wife. You pretend to understand our culture while butchering our language. You claim to value partnership while demonstrating that you view people as tools to be used. Sir, please, let me explain. Mr. Takahashi held up a hand, silencing him. There is nothing to explain. Takahashi Industries will not be moving forward with this partnership. The words landed like a death sentence. Marcus's face went white, then red. You can't. We've been working on this for months. The contracts are ready. Your board already approved. My board approved based on the assumption that Williams Global Consulting operated with integrity, Mr. Takahashi said. Tonight has revealed otherwise. The decision is final.
My decision is made. This discussion is over.
But sir, this impacts hundreds of jobs. There must be another way.
His hand shaking. This is because my wife decided to grandstand and show off? Mr. Williams, Kenji said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Your wife saved you from an even greater embarrassment. My father was testing you. He wanted to see if you would defend your wife when you thought no one who mattered could understand. You failed that test spectacularly. Mrs. Williams, on the other hand, demonstrated grace, intelligence, and cultural fluency that your firm claimed to possess, but clearly does not. This is insane, Marcus said, his voice rising. You're throwing away a $600 million deal because of some domestic drama? We are walking away from a partnership with someone who lacks honor, Mr. Takahashi said simply. No amount of money is worth compromising our values. He stood, the other executives rising with him. They bowed to Naomi, deep bows of genuine respect. She stood and returned the gesture, her movements perfect, practiced, the product of years of her mother's careful instruction. Mrs. Williams, Mr. Takahashi said, it was an honor to meet you. Your mother raised you well. I hope that whatever path you choose from here, it leads you to people who recognize your value. Thank you, Takahashi-sama, Naomi said. The honor was mine. The Japanese executives filed out of the private dining room, leaving Marcus and Naomi alone with the ruins of what was supposed to be his greatest triumph. The translator had fled at some point during the confrontation, probably to avoid being associated with the disaster. Marcus stood frozen, staring at the door through which $600 million had just walked. Then he turned to Naomi, and the look in his eyes was something she'd never seen before. Pure, undiluted rage. What have you done? He whispered. I spoke, Naomi said calmly. For the first time in 4 years, I actually spoke. You destroyed everything, Marcus shouted, his composure finally shattering. Do you have any idea what you've cost me? That deal was going to make my career. It was going to put Williams Global on the map. And you sabotaged it because of what? Because your feelings got hurt? You called me stupid, Naomi said, her voice steady despite the trembling she felt inside. You told a potential business partner that I was nothing more than a decoration. You reduced 4 years of marriage to a punchline, and you did it in a language you thought I couldn't understand, which makes it so much worse. I was building rapport, Marcus said desperately. That's what men do in business. We joke around. We bond. You're not supposed to take it seriously. But you meant it, Naomi said. That's the thing, Marcus. You meant every word. I could hear it in your voice. This is what you actually think of me. Marcus ran his hands through his hair, pacing. Okay, fine. Fine. Maybe I was insensitive. Maybe I said things I shouldn't have. But you could have talked to me about it privately. You didn't have to humiliate me in front of the most important clients I've ever had. The way you humiliated me, Naomi asked. That's different. They didn't know you could understand. So it's only humiliation if the victim knows about it? Naomi's voice finally cracked, emotion breaking through the calm facade. It's only disrespect if I'm aware enough to feel it? Marcus, do you hear yourself? He stopped pacing, his chest heaving. When he spoke again, his voice was cold. Get your things. We're leaving. No, Naomi said. What do you mean, no? I mean, I'm not going home with you tonight, or any night. Marcus laughed, but it was a harsh, brittle sound. Oh, so now you're leaving me? Because of one bad dinner? Because I made one joke you didn't like? No, Naomi said, standing up and meeting his eyes with a steadiness that surprised even herself. I'm leaving you because tonight I finally saw what I've been refusing to see for 4 years. You don't love me, Marcus. You love what I do for you. You love having me on your arm at events. You love telling people you have an exotic wife. You love that I manage your household and organize your life and make you look good. But you don't love me. You don't even respect me enough to wonder who I am when you're not looking. That's not true, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. When's my birthday? Naomi asked suddenly. Marcus blinked. What? My birthday. When is it? This isn't the time for... When is it, Marcus? He stammered. It's in the fall, isn't it? March, Naomi said. March 15th. We've been married for 4 years. And you don't know when my birthday is. What's my favorite food? Naomi, come on. What did I study in college? What was my mother's profession? What's the name of the city where I grew up? Do you know any of these things, Marcus? The silence stretched between them, damning and absolute. I know you, Marcus finally said, but his voice was weak. You know the version of me you needed me to be, Naomi said. And tonight I realized that I've been so busy being that version that I forgot who I actually am. She picked up her purse, a small clutch that matched her dress. She'd chosen the outfit carefully that morning, wanting to look perfect for Marcus's big night. The irony wasn't lost on her. Where are you going? Marcus demanded. To my mother's house, Naomi said, and tomorrow I'm calling a lawyer. You can't leave me? Marcus said, his tone shifting to something pleading. Naomi, please, we can work through this. I'll do better. I'll pay more attention. Just don't do this. Not now. Not when everything's already falling apart. Everything's falling apart because it was built on sand, Naomi said. She walked toward the door, then paused and turned back. You want to know the saddest part, Marcus? I would have helped you. If you'd asked me, if you'd treated me like a partner instead of a prop, I could have helped you prepare for that meeting. I could have coached you on the culture, refined your presentation, made sure you didn't make any of the dozen mistakes you made tonight. I have a degree in international business with a focus on East Asian markets. But you never asked. You never even looked at my diploma hanging in your office. Marcus stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. You studied international business? Graduated top of my class? Naomi said. Got offers from McKinsey, Bain, and Deloitte. Turned them all down because you said you needed me to focus on supporting your career. You said we were a team. Turns out teams usually have more than one player who matters. She opened the door to the private dining room. The main restaurant was still bustling, unaware of the implosion that had just occurred behind the shoji screens. Naomi, wait, Marcus called out. But she was already walking away, her heels clicking against the polished floor with a rhythm that sounded like freedom. Outside, the Atlanta night was warm and humid, the air thick with the promise of summer storms. Naomi stood on the sidewalk, pulled out her phone, and called her mother. Yuki Tanaka answered on the second ring. Naomi? Sweetheart, it's late. Is everything okay? Mom, Naomi said, and her voice finally broke. Can I come home? Always, her mother said without hesitation. Always, baby? I'll put tea on. Naomi hung up and raised her hand for a taxi. As she waited, she caught her reflection in the restaurant's window. She looked the same as she had when she'd arrived that evening. Same dress, same hair, same face. But something fundamental had changed. For the first time in 4 years, she recognized the woman looking back at her. The taxi pulled up. As Naomi slid into the back seat and gave the driver her mother's address, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. She opened it. "Mrs. Williams, this is Kenji Takahashi. My father asked me to pass along his contact information. He believes your talents are being wasted. If you're interested in exploring opportunities with Takahashi Industries, he would very much like to speak with you. No pressure, just an open door." Naomi stared at the message for a long moment. Then she saved the number and looked out at the city lights streaming past the window. Behind her, in that restaurant, Marcus Williams was probably still sitting in the private dining room, surrounded by the remnants of a dinner that had cost him everything. But that was his story now, not hers. Hers was just beginning. The taxi merged onto the highway, and Naomi watched the city skyline shrink in the rearview mirror. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Marcus. She declined the call. Then another. And another. On the fourth attempt, she powered off the device entirely and let the silence settle around her like a blanket. Her mother's house was in Decatur, a quiet neighborhood of craftsman homes and tree-lined streets that felt a world away from the gleaming high-rise where she'd lived with Marcus. When the taxi pulled up, the porch light was on, and through the window, Naomi could see her mother moving around in the kitchen, exactly as she'd promised. Yuki Tanaka opened the door before Naomi could knock. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with silver threading through her black hair and eyes that missed nothing. She took one look at her daughter's face and pulled her into the house without a word. Inside, the familiar scent of green tea and jasmine incense wrapped around Naomi like a hug. The house was exactly as she remembered. Warm, lived in, filled with books in both English and Japanese. Photographs spanning decades, plants thriving in every corner. Her mother had always had a gift for making things grow. "Sit," Yuki said, guiding her to the kitchen table. "Tea first, then talk." Naomi sank into the chair, the same chair she'd sat in as a child doing homework while her mother graded papers at the university. Her mother moved through the familiar ritual of preparing tea, the soft clink of porcelain, the gentle pour of water, the patience required to let it steep properly. When Yuki finally sat down across from her, placing a delicate cup in front of Naomi, she simply said, "Tell me." And Naomi did. Everything. The dinner, the test, Marcus's words, the translator's horror, the deal falling apart, the confrontation. Her mother listened without interrupting, her expression growing colder with each detail. When Naomi finished, Yuki was quiet for a long moment. Then she said in Japanese, "I never liked him." Naomi blinked. "What? Your husband?" Yuki continued in Japanese, her tone matter-of-fact. "I never liked him. From the first time you brought him home, I saw what he was. A peacock. All display, no substance. He looked at you the way men look at cars they want to buy, admiring the exterior, never wondering about the engine." "Mom, why didn't you say something?" Yuki smiled sadly. "Would you have listened? You were in love, or you thought you were. Sometimes children need to learn their own lessons. I just wish this one hadn't cost you 4 years. I wasted so much time," Naomi whispered. "No," Yuki said firmly, switching to English. "You learned. That's not waste. That's education. And education, my daughter, is never wasted, even when it hurts." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. "He called me stupid, Mom, in front of strangers. He reduced me to nothing." "He tried to," Yuki corrected, "but you didn't let him. You spoke up. You reclaimed yourself. That takes courage." She reached across the table and took Naomi's hand. "Your father would be proud. I know I am." The mention of her father, gone now for 3 years, broke something loose in Naomi's chest. The tears came then, hot and fast. 4 years of swallowed pride and silenced thoughts pouring out in great, shaking sobs. Her mother came around the table and held her, the way she'd done when Naomi was small, steady, and unshakable. You're home now, Yuki murmured. You're safe. And tomorrow, we figure out what comes next. Naomi slept in her old bedroom that night, in the same bed she'd slept in as a teenager. The sheets smelled like lavender, and through the window, she could hear crickets singing in the garden. She fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted by the weight of finally standing up for herself. She woke to sunlight streaming through the curtains and the smell of her mother's cooking. When she shuffled into the kitchen, still wearing the borrowed pajamas Yuki had laid out for her, she found her mother preparing a full Japanese breakfast: grilled fish, miso soup, rice, pickled vegetables, the kind of meal that required time and attention. You didn't have to do all this, Naomi said. I wanted to, Yuki replied. Besides, you need strength for what comes next. Eat. While they ate, Naomi powered on her phone. 53 missed calls from Marcus. 27 text messages that devolved from apologetic to angry to desperate. 3 voicemails she deleted without listening to. But there was also an email that made her pause. It was from Helena Okonkwo, a lawyer Naomi had met at a charity event 2 years ago. They'd talked for hours about everything except law, books, travel, the challenge of maintaining identity within marriage. Helena had given Naomi her card and said, "If you ever need anything, call me." Naomi had kept the card in her wallet, not knowing why. The email was brief. Naomi, I heard what happened at Sakura Gardens. Word travels fast in Atlanta business circles. If you need representation, I'm here. No judgment, just help. Call me when you're ready. Naomi stared at the message. How does she already know? The internet moves faster than shame, Yuki said dryly. What does it say? Naomi showed her. Yuki read it and nodded approvingly. This Helena, she's good people. I remember her. Smart woman, kind eyes. Call her. So she did. Within an hour, Helena was sitting in Yuki's living room, her briefcase open, a legal pad balanced on her knee. She was a tall woman with natural hair pulled back in an elegant twist, wearing a burgundy suit that meant business. First things first, Helena said. Are you safe? Do you feel threatened? Physically? No, Naomi said. Marcus isn't violent. Just dismissive, cruel in quiet ways. Helena nodded, making notes. That's its own kind of violence. Tell me about your marriage. Assets, accounts, property. What's in your name? As Naomi talked, a picture emerged that made Helena's expression grow grimmer. The house was in Marcus's name. The cars were in Marcus's name. Their joint account had her name on it, but Marcus controlled it. She'd been added as an authorized user on his credit cards. On paper, Naomi owned nothing. I gave up my job to support his career, Naomi said quietly. He said we didn't need 2 incomes. He said I could focus on making a home, on being there for him. I thought it meant we were partners. It meant he was building a cage, Helena said bluntly. But here's the good news. Georgia is an equitable distribution state. Doesn't matter whose name is on what. The court looks at contributions to the marriage, and that includes non-financial contributions. You supported his career, managed his household, played the corporate wife at his events. That has value. He's going to fight this, Naomi said. Let him fight, Helena replied. We have something better than anger. We have documentation. You said there were witnesses last night? Reporters? Cameras? Naomi nodded slowly. The restaurant. There were other diners. Some of them had their phones out. Helena smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. Then by now, there's probably video. And video doesn't lie. A man humiliating his wife in public, calling her stupid, treating her like property, that's not going to play well in court or in the court of public opinion. I don't want revenge, Naomi said carefully. I just want out. I want to be free. Freedom is the best revenge, Helena said, but we're going to make sure you're not just free. We're going to make sure you're whole. Now, tell me about these opportunities with Takahashi Industries. Over the next 3 days, Naomi's life transformed. Helena filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting temporary spousal support. Marcus's lawyer responded with outrage and accusations, claiming Naomi had sabotaged his business and owed him damages. Let him try, Helena said when she showed Naomi the response. Discovery is going to be fun. We'll subpoena his communications, his financial records. See how he's really been spending your marital assets. My guess? We're going to find some interesting expenses." She was right. Within a week, Discovery revealed that Marcus had been using marital funds to wine and dine potential clients at strip clubs, charging personal expenses to the business, and paying for a gym membership he claimed was for client entertainment, but actually used exclusively for himself. Worse, there were text messages to colleagues that referenced Naomi in degrading terms, calling her his trophy, his showpiece, his pretty distraction. The messages made Naomi's stomach turn, but Helena was delighted. "This is gold," she said. "He's painted himself as exactly what he is. The judge is going to love this." Meanwhile, Naomi had coffee with Kenji Takahashi. They met at a quiet cafe in Midtown, far from the business district, where she might run into Marcus's associates. "Mrs. Williams," Kenji said, standing when she arrived. "Thank you for meeting me." "It's Chen Williams," Naomi said, "and soon it will just be Chen again." "Miss Chen," he corrected smoothly. "Even better. My father wanted me to extend a formal offer. Takahashi Industries is expanding our American operations. We need someone who understands both cultures, who can navigate the complexities of international business with authenticity, not performance. Your credentials are impressive. Your character is more so." "You're offering me a job?" Naomi asked carefully. "I'm offering you a career," Kenji said. "Director of International Relations, reporting directly to my father. Competitive salary, full benefits, and the freedom to build a department the right way. We've seen too many American firms fail in Asian markets because they send people who think cultural sensitivity means learning to use chopsticks. You're the real thing." Naomi felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Hope, maybe. Or possibility. "I'm in the middle of a divorce. It's going to be messy. Public. We're aware," Kenji said. "And we don't care. If anything, it demonstrates that you have principles you're willing to fight for. That's exactly the kind of person we want representing us. When would you need an answer?" "Take your time," Kenji said. "Talk to your lawyer. Talk to your mother. Talk to yourself. The offer stands. We're patient." That night, Naomi sat in her mother's garden, surrounded by the plants Yuki tended with such care. Her phone buzzed, another message from Marcus, the tone shifting again to desperate. "Naomi, please. I'm losing everything. The business is falling apart. I need you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Just come back. We can start over. I'll be better. I promise." She read it twice, waiting to feel something. Sympathy. Maybe. Regret. But all she felt was tired. Tired of being someone's safety net. Tired of being appreciated only in absence. Tired of making herself small so someone else could feel big. She typed a single response. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Marcus. But it's not with me. Please stop contacting me. Let the lawyers handle it." Then she blocked his number. It felt like setting down a weight she'd been carrying for years. 2 months later, Naomi stood in front of the mirror in her new apartment, a sleek one-bedroom in Virginia Highland, with hardwood floors and windows that filled the space with light. She was wearing a charcoal suit, her hair pulled back in a professional twist, a Takahashi Industries ID badge clipped to her lapel. Her mother was there, helping her prepare for her first day. "You look like yourself," Yuki said approvingly. "The self I always knew was there." "I feel like myself," Naomi replied. For the first time in years. The divorce had been finalized the week before. Helena had negotiated a settlement that gave Naomi half of everything Marcus had built during their marriage, including his retirement accounts and the equity in the house. He'd fought every line item. But the evidence? The videos from the restaurant, his degrading text messages, his misuse of marital funds, had been damning. The judge had not been sympathetic. Williams Global Consulting had collapsed without the Takahashi deal. Marcus had been forced to lay off most of his staff and downsize to a small office in a cheaper part of town. Naomi had heard through mutual acquaintances that he was scrambling to keep the lights on, taking on smaller clients he'd once considered beneath him. She didn't take pleasure in his downfall. She just no longer felt responsible for preventing it. Her phone chimed. A message from Helena. Kick ass on your first day, boss. You earned this. Another from Kenji. Looking forward to working with you. The team is excited to meet their new director. And one from her mother, even though Yuki was standing right next to her. Proud doesn't even begin to cover it. Go show them what the daughter of Yuki Tanaka can do. Naomi picked up her briefcase, the leather soft and new, and took one last look around her apartment. This was hers. The furniture she'd chosen, the books she'd arranged, the space she'd created for the person she was becoming. At the door, she paused and turned back to her mother. Thank you, she said, for keeping the door open, for not saying, I told you so, for letting me find my way back. Yuki smiled. That's what mothers do. We hold the light until you're ready to see it. She kissed Naomi's cheek. Now go. You have a world to change. Naomi walked out into the morning sunshine, feeling lighter than she had in years. Somewhere across the city, Marcus Williams was probably waking up in the house he could barely afford anymore, surrounded by the empire he'd built on borrowed confidence and someone else's sacrifice. But that was his story now. This one, the one unfolding with each step Naomi took toward her car, toward her future, toward the life she'd almost forgotten she deserved. This was hers. And it was just beginning. She'd walked into that restaurant as someone's accessory. She was walking out of this apartment as herself. And that, she realized as she started the car and pulled into traffic, was worth more than any deal Marcus Williams could have ever closed. Viewers, what would you do if someone you loved reduced you to nothing? Would you stay silent or would you speak up? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is remember who you were before someone convinced you to be less. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind you that your voice, your intelligence, and your worth are never negotiable, no matter who tries to tell you otherwise.